February 7th, 2013. Episode 7, Part 2, Economics and Trust. As always, welcome, and hopefully welcome back. Also, if this is the first time that you've ever heard me, and you like what you hear, make sure to go by the website at mad-yet.blogspot.com. There, you'll be able to find simple and easy links to our material on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and on iTunes. Now let's go see what I had to say in my new article. Here are some examples of bank runs. 4th century BC, Dionysius the Elder of Syracuse, Greece. Due to his rampant wars and other conquests, he owed a massive amount of debt. Due to this, he declared that all coins be collected under penalty of death. He then cut every singular coin into 2 coins and used them to pay off his loans. This led to no one wanting to loan him money anymore. Everyone lost faith in his money, including its citizenry, and thus ending financial prosperity in that area. Caused fraud. 1620s, 30 Years' War. This was in Germany. During this period, German city-states printed imitation coins of rival city-states' currency and infused it into the opposing city-states' economy. This caused uproars and riots of its military and citizens. The military personnel simply refused to serve unless given verifiable coinage. Cause fraud. 1772. The Crisis of 1772. Scotland. In 1769, John Law founded the Ayr Bank in Scotland. This bank was built on inflationist schemes that caused the collapse of the bank in 1772, losing a significant amount of money. The other banks of Scotland quickly returned the Ayr Bank notes to its originator and left the 241 shareholders of the Ayr Bank to face the full brunt of the loss, of which the shareholders paid off all creditors in full. Talk about a bad business deal. This event triggered the Boston Tea Party, which clearly explains the power that economics has on people, nations, and societies. Cause fraud. 1873. The Panic of 1873. Later known as the Long Depression, United States and Europe. This event was caused by the fall in demand of silver internationally due to Germany deciding to abandon the silver standard. This led to inflation, speculation, and rampant trade deficits, caused by unlinking a commodity from a nation's currency. Sound like something we see in today's economy? 1914, Schwenk Bank Run, New York, New York. State bank regulators seized 3 banks owned by Ladisius W. Schwenk for sketchy and disingenuous accounting practices. This caused crowds of angry citizens who had money in Mr. Schwenk's banks to try to get their money out before the bank failed. Cause fraud. 1930s, Great Depression, United States and worldwide. During this period, 9,000-plus banks failed due to stock market failure on October 29, 1929. This put the world's economy into a tailspin and took years to recover. Personal income, tax revenue, profits, and prices dropped, and international trade dropped by as much as 50% during this period. Cause greed and market manipulation, and blatant money contraction by the Federal Reserve. 1946, Potter's Panic, Bedford Falls, New York. A liquidity crisis at Bailey Building and Loan, which turned the town into a shell of its former self. Today, the town's economy only survives due to citizens being employed by the local penitentiary, which imprisons nonviolent drug offenders. Cause fraud. 1980s, Savings and Loan Crisis, United States. This was the failure of 1/4 of all of the savings and loan associations in the United States that cost the taxpayers nearly $90 billion. Some estimates put that figure into the low range of actual liability to the U.S. taxpayers. Cause a mix of manipulation, greed, and criminal accounting practices. I could keep going on, even using Argentina, Germany, or a boatload of other examples to describe what happens during hyperinflation as well, but I think I have explained my point already. However, we need to move on and explain how everything changed, and it happened only recently considering the timeline I used above. Nixon changed everything. On August 15, 1971, the entire game of economics shifted again, but not in a good way. As the opening states, this article is about economics and trust. Trust is exactly what everyone lost in the United States on this day in history. On this date, President Richard Nixon terminated the convertibility of the U.S. dollar to gold, ending the Bretton Woods Agreement. This singular action put the world's economic markets into septic shock almost immediately. How did the Bretton Woods Agreement work? Simply put, the other nations of the world agreed to peg their currencies to the U.S. dollar, and we agreed to convert 1 ounce of gold for every $35 in a collective effort to stabilize the world's economies after years of war and other negative factors the world faced during this time period in the past. The Vietnam War alone cost the U.S. $500 billion or more, but cost us much more in human terms. But that is a tale for another article. With the stroke of a pen and a statement on television, we deprived the world of nearly $60 billion in a gold that was owed to them. We effectively defaulted on our debt by refusing to deliver this commodity as agreed upon. He then, some claim inadvertently, linked the U.S. dollar to oil, i.e. the petrodollar, from OPEC nations and agreed not to print too many U.S. dollars during this agreement, which, in recent times, we see Obama letting the Federal Reserve print the U.S. dollar in unprecedented amounts, rubbing other countries' noses, OPEC nations, in the fact that we have a printing press and they don't. This doesn't sit well with many countries, and it shouldn't. Ask yourself, how would you feel if someone swindled you? Nixon's actions on this day polarized the economies of the world and immediately placed the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency of many nations. This means other nations were forced to use the U.S. dollar as a primary tool of trade and conduct business internally and internationally in many cases. This also made economies such as those using the British pound sterling into free-floating status. This caused massive problems throughout the world's financial markets. It was a game changer in every sense of the word. Trust was gone. We broke our promise. Principles should have taken precedence in this case, but they were forsaken for reasons we still don't fully understand. Mr. Nixon's decision forever cemented him as Tricky Dick. This nickname was derived from the JFK campaign posters asking, "Would you buy a used car from this man?" as displayed in my article, but stuck with him due to his actions during this economic roller coaster. We as a nation are now seen as untrustworthy due to Mr. Nixon's actions. Our country is seen as a pariah, a parasite, and a leech to many in this world because of his actions. The world believes our moral fiber and our intrinsic values have been eroded and replaced by lies, schemes, and plots to overthrow the first nation they see with assets such as gold or oil. The world went from seeing us as the city on the hill to an imperialistic hegemony hell-bent on taking the riches of their land, and they are wise to think such a thing because of the actions we show recently. Can you say Iraq? How about Libya? I could give you many more examples, but the common theme here is that these countries have oil, and if you think that is a coincidence, you are living in a fairy tale land, and you are incapable of seeing what is right in front of your face. Is this still a problem? When our nation's economy took a nosedive in 2008, our demise was almost guaranteed. Our national debt is so large currently that other countries know we can't pay them back. They also know our history of defaulting on debt, and are well aware that we will do it again if we feel we have no other option. Anyone left holding U.S. dollars when this happens will take the largest economic hit ever seen in the history of the world. Governments around the world are waking up to the fact that the U.S. is bankrupt. Due to this, agreements to conduct business with commodities such as gold, oil, and other items are growing in frequency and location. The countries relying on commodity-based trading show no signs of slowing or stopping this practice, and will not use the U.S. dollar for reasons stated earlier. Nations like China, Russia, India, Iran, and many others understand economics. They know that accepting U.S. dollars leaves them susceptible to future liabilities due to our history of default, and they are unwilling to accept it again. No one with any common sense can blame them for not accepting our money. In fact, You should be horrified at these events and be chastising your senators and congressmen for spending more time suggesting legislation for stupid laws and pushing legislation like gun control instead of focusing on the economic health of our nation. What is going on in today's political climate is not only egregious, but tantamount to criminal. When you consider that your economic security has been usurped by banks who lobby politicians to get the sweetest deals on the planet and then just keep pushing for more because of greed. Understand, your economic security and your personal rights are not their focus. Neither are justice or honor. No, the only focus for politicians today is lining their bank accounts so they can win their next election, and this must be addressed openly. How do we change this? It goes without saying we need to mandate some serious civics and ethics courses throughout the United States. But this isn't the job of the government. No, this needs to be done by mothers, fathers, and family members all over this nation. Ethics, morals, and faith are jobs for family and churches, not government. You can't blame corporations, since they're not alive, but somehow they have voting rights. No one but the owners of these corporations can be held accountable for their actions. In certain cultures, we see millions starving, but these companies in these areas produce useless electronics, shoes, or other textiles instead of food. Does this make sense to you? At some point, you have to admit that something is wrong. These companies are focusing on profit, not value. I dislike government because I have studied, and I see what atrocities they are capable of when left unchecked by apathetic and ignorant populations. I have learned of the injustices government has caused throughout history, but it is my opinion that government's job is to benevolently oversee and manage a society's resources to the benefit of its citizens when ran correctly. Governments like the ones I stated above are not managing their culture's wealth and resources in a way that is beneficial to its citizens. A malignful, greedy, and counterproductive government is no different than the corporations and greedy banks that have crippled our own economy today. If this is your first time realizing any of this, I am happy I could give you a new perspective to see it from. We need to wake up our friends and our family. We need to heal this scar called greed that has torn across our nation and rippled throughout our society. Live beneath your means and do what you can to share information that you feel is important, so we can spotlight those who abuse power vested in them by honest and hard-working citizens. In closing, I want to leave you with a few words to think on. The world provides enough to satisfy every man's need, but not every man's greed. Mahatma Gandhi. I tell you these words because in tense, conflicted, and oppressive times, this simple, humble, and honest man's views on how to handle the beast called government were simple. He simply stopped, sat down, and refused to play its games. Even his enemies claimed they trusted him. We could take a few lessons from this man's playbook, as his views and leadership could definitely be used today. And that concludes my article. If you like what you hear, make sure to drop by our Facebook and our Twitter page, give us a like, maybe a follow. Make sure to get this word out. Thanks for dropping by and keep checking in.